rain was coming down in sheets against the stained glass window of the Genoa City Chapel, each droplet catching the pale morning light like liquid silver, and as Mariah sat alone in the back pew with her mother's rosary wrapped around her fingers, the same rosary Sharon had clutched during every court hearing, every hospital vigil, every moment when the world seemed determined to shatter her into 1,000 jagged pieces, she found herself wanting to believe in something, anything, that could stitch the torn fabric of her family back together. It wasn't faith, exactly, not the kind that filled pews on Sunday mornings or made people whisper about miracles. It was something rawer, more desperate, the kind of wanting that lived in the hollow of her chest where fear had carved out a permanent home ever since she'd first learned the truth about her origins. About the baby stolen from a teenage girl who'd been told her child was dead, about the decades of secrets that had turned Genoa City into a battlefield where the Newmans and the Abbotts and the Winters and the Rosaleses all fought for control of something they called love, but that looked, from where Mariah sat, a whole lot like mutual assured destruction. She wanted to believe that her mother, her adoptive mother, her real mother, the woman who had raised her and the woman who had birthed her, because Mariah had learned the hard way that family was a verb, not a noun, that Sharon would walk through that chapel door any minute now, her auburn hair damp from the rain, her eyes clear for the first time in months, and say that the doctors had been wrong, that the medication was working, that the voices in her head had finally gone quiet. But Sharon was at Fairview again, sedated behind double-locked doors, and the only person who'd visited her in the past 3 days was Ray, who still wore his wedding ring even though the papers had been signed, even though Sharon had screamed at him that she never loved him, that she only married him to get back at Nick, that she was still in love with a man who had moved on with a woman who used to be her best friend. Mariah wanted to believe that love wasn't just a series of tactical maneuvers, that somewhere beneath all the boardroom betrayals and bedroom confessions and DNA tests that revealed yet another long-lost heir, there was something real holding these people together. She thought about Tessa, about the way Tessa's hand felt when it slipped into hers during the dark hours, about the quiet certainty of waking up next to someone who chose you every single day without needing to destroy anyone else in the process. That was the kind of belief she wanted, not the flashy kind, not the Victor Newman kind where belief meant betting millions on a hunch and watching your enemies crumble, but the small, stubborn kind, the kind that let you make coffee in the morning even when you knew the day ahead held nothing but bad news and worse decisions. Outside the chapel window, she could see the sign for Newman Enterprises gleaming through the rain, that arrogant tower of glass and steel that Victor had built to scrape the heavens and remind everyone below that he was the closest thing Genoa City had to a god. Victor believed in power, in legacy, in the cold arithmetic of loyalty and revenge, and for most of her life, Mariah had watched that belief system eat everyone she loved. It had eaten Nick's first marriage, it had eaten Victoria's childhood, it had eaten Adam's soul until he didn't know whether he was the villain or the victim or some ungodly mixture of both. And yet, and this was the part that kept Mariah awake at night, the part that made her want to scream into her pillow, Victor believed so completely, so unshakably, that his way was the only way, that his love was the only love that counted, that even his enemies ended up believing in him a little, just enough to hesitate before pulling the trigger. That was the dark magic of Genoa City. Everyone wanted to believe in something, even if that something was a lie wrapped in a three-piece suit. Mariah wanted to believe that her brother Adam could change, that the man who had faked his own death and tampered with a fetus's DNA and driven his own father to the brink of madness could somehow, someday, sit across a Thanksgiving table without someone throwing a punch or a subpoena. She wanted to believe that Chelsea would forgive him, that Connor would grow up without the weight of his father's sins pressing down on his small shoulders, that the cycle of betrayal and redemption and fresh betrayal could be broken by something as simple as a sincere apology. But Chelsea had moved to Paris with their son, and Adam had retreated into the same hollow-eyed silence that had preceded his worst decisions, and Victor was already plotting his next move, already convinced that Adam would return to the fold once he'd suffered enough, because that was how Victor believed the world worked. You broke the ones you loved until they were grateful for the pieces you bothered to pick up. The chapel door creaked open, and Mariah's heart lurched, but it was only a tourist, some lost soul who'd wandered in off the street to escape the rain, and she watched the woman light a candle and cross herself with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times without ever asking why. That was another kind of belief, the inherited kind, the kind that came from grandmothers and old countries and traditions that outlasted empires. Mariah had never had that. Her grandmother, her real grandmother, the one who'd raised Sharon after her own mother died, had believed in hard work and silence and the terrible math of keeping secrets. And look where that had gotten them. Sharon had spent 20 years unknowingly mourning a child who was alive, and Mariah had spent 18 years believing she was an only child when she was actually a twin, a replacement, a ghost given flesh and a new name. Sometimes, in her darker moments, Mariah wondered if she believed in anything at all, or if belief was just another word for denial, another way of painting a smile over the cracks in the foundation. She believed that Tessa loved her. She held onto that like a life raft, like the last piece of driftwood in an ocean of betrayal, but even that belief had been tested, strained almost to breaking, when Tessa had lied about the money, when she'd hidden the truth about her sister, when Mariah had looked into the eyes of the woman she loved and seen a stranger staring back. They had healed, mostly, but the scar tissue was there, a reminder that belief was never passive, never safe, never the comfortable blanket that the hymns promised. Belief was work. Belief was waking up every morning and choosing to trust again, even when every cell in your body was screaming that trust was the quickest path to the knife in your back. She thought about Kyle and Summer, about the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching, and she wondered if they believed in their own happy ending or if they were just too exhausted to keep fighting the current. Kyle had believed in Lola once, had married her in a ceremony so beautiful that Mariah had cried actual tears, and then Summer had walked back into his life and all that belief had evaporated like morning fog on the lake. Was that what belief was? A temporary condition, a fever that broke as soon as the object of your affection changed their hair color or smiled at someone else. Mariah wanted to believe in something permanent, something that didn't dissolve under cross-examination or a single text message from an ex. She wanted to believe that Phyllis could stay out of trouble, that Jack could finally find peace, that Billy would stop self-destructing long enough to see that he was loved. But Phyllis was already scheming again, Jack was already cleaning up another mess, and Billy was already staring at the bottom of a glass like it held the answer to a question he was afraid to ask out loud. That was the curse of Genoa City, Mariah thought. Everyone wanted to believe, but no one wanted to do the hard, boring, unglamorous work of being trustworthy. They wanted grand gestures and dramatic confessions and last-minute rescues from burning buildings. They didn't want to show up on time, or remember to take out the trash, or say, "I'm sorry," without adding, "but you made me do it."